Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your Tuesday host here on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we are talking about the science behind magic. This week's question comes from Mike Penn 0287, who writes, "Are there any good places to look for the science behind the practices of paganism? I mean, are there any studies in the different techniques as to which work better under what circumstances, matching to the elemental type of the person, or how the different energies interact? Better visualization ideas for better use of energy or for healing? Maybe there's a name for it." And then they have a second question, which was, "I'm also curious if you've ever heard of anything with spirit guides sharing their energy with you. By that I mean my spirit guide jumped into me and felt unique merging of energy. I've spent years on this one." Sorry I read that really quickly, but as always the text will be in the description. So firstly, when I went to search for some sources for you guys, Google told me that today is Copernicus's birthday! Happy birthday, Copernicus! Thanks for teaching us about our universe, and that is totally relevant to this week's topic. So when people mention the science behind magic, the first couple of things I think of are always crystals, herbs, and things of that nature. Crystal vibrations and the mineral properties of stones have certain effects on the body. Herbs also have effects on the body that we can study, which is why you can go to the store and buy a tea that is good for sleep and another tea with different things in it that is good for energizing. Psychology studies the many ways that our mind works and the effects that it has, how certain magical practices have different effects on us by changing the way that we think, and other things of that nature. Various sciences also teach us things like how energy works in the universe, and how life works, and how electromagnetic fields work, and so on. A lot of people assume that magical people ignore science and refuse to believe in experimental evidence, but I don't actually know that many practitioners who do that. Instead, let's think of it this way. Earth-based practitioners revere the earth, yes? So if scientists can study and learn about the earth and tell us how the earth works, why would we ignore that? Why wouldn't we instead embrace the newly established scientific discoveries that they've made about the planet that we love so much and apply it to our already working knowledge, thereby using every possible source of information? And those of us who believe in the universe at large, again, I would think we would want to incorporate all the things that scientists can teach us about that universe in order to better work with it. Because if you know how every little piece of a car works, for example, you're going to be a lot better at working with that car and fixing it when it goes wrong than, say, I would be. Because I know very little about the mechanics of cars. Now, before I go into my personal answer to this question, I am going to share some sources that I found very quickly and easily on Google. The first one is a site called Magick of Thought, A Scientist Explores Magic, and I only looked through it very briefly, but I am definitely going to go back to this site and read some more. This is a person who is coming at it from a completely scientific standpoint, wanting to find out why magic works, what actually makes it tick, what can we study. He's got a lot of different sources, a lot of different pages. It's blog style format, but the link that I'm giving you is the home page, which kind of introduces him and how this started. And you can click on the various tabs at the top and links along the sides and things like that to find what seems to be a plethora of knowledge about how he personally has discovered magic through science. The second thing is just an article from spiralnature.com about science and magic, and again, it's just kind of how magic works scientifically. There is an article about magic and physics, because physics is absolutely a huge discipline that is good for also understanding magic, and I haven't taken physics since high school, so I only vaguely remember. I can kind of have a working conversation with people still, but the scientific language of physics is not as much in the forefront of my mind, and this article definitely uses that terminology a bit more. But physics is absolutely one discipline that is great for understanding how magic works and how we like to describe it. I know that the book Paganism by Joyce and River Higginbotham goes into some of those things, and they have different diagrams and kind of breaking it down into layman's terms, but essentially they're talking about physics and how we relate that to how we use magic. And then there is a blog entry from the Concerning Druids blog called The Science of Magic. Again, the blog in general seems like a really great resource. And then I also found another site about science and magic, but you have to view the cached copy. So you can click on the individual articles once you're there, but you have to, again, see the cached copy of it to read it. There's a video from Bespoke UK, I think is what it's called, about quantifying and qualifying results from magic. Supernatural science is what he calls it. Definitely watch the video, and if you can get through the first minute and a half or so where he's really saying the things that might get you angry, the rest of the video is very worthwhile. Because he starts by saying things like belief is a crime, it's an intellectual crime, and that magic is meant to be miraculous and supernatural. And so the description of the video actually says that his purpose in talking about this stuff is to undo the damage done by the believers. I really wonder if any scientists know that believers pay attention to the actual reality of how things work. And again, I know you guys have heard this a million times, but it's mostly not supernatural to most practitioners. It's about natural forces, and it's about using what is possible in nature. But anyway, if you can get past that, he recommends taking notes and recording your results and what you experience in order to keep track of what's working and what's not. He talks about measuring temperature with certain visualizations to see your body's physical effects, and he also talks about playing with people's dreams and working on trying to change someone else's dreams and then talking to them to get your feedback about whether or not it worked. So he's actually talking about practices that I think most practitioners already use, like recording things and keeping track, but he thinks that we don't believe in it, which is the funny part. The video is from 2008, so I didn't bother commenting on it. Talk about it amongst yourselves. Now, with those sources out of the way, I am almost done, and this brings me to my personal note. I took a course with a doctor of psychology in which we looked at empirical research for prejudice, and I did my studies on prejudice against pagans. You probably heard me talk about it before. After this class, someone tried to tell me that magic wasn't real because we can't study it, we can't repeat it, blah blah blah. But actually, the way that some of us record our magic, as I was just talking about, is basically empirical research. It's what the video was talking about, taking notes before and after, recording every step of your method, and then recording the results that you observed. If you've ever had to write a lab report, it sounds similar. You have to pay very close attention to everything that happened, every condition, whatever conditions might have an effect on it. So like you might note the temperature or the time of day, whereas in magic you may also want to note the moon phase if you're trying to work with the moon phase, things like that. So whatever is relevant, it's about noting that and then recording the results that you get. Again, as he was talking about in the video, you can't say that magic did this definitively, but you can record what you did and what you observed. You also can't say it works this way all of the times, because I personally believe that magic differs from person to person. So the methods that I have found that work best for me may also be the methods that work the best for you, but they may not. So it's not universally repeatable in that sense, which I understand is where a lot of people would disregard it. But still, each individual can try various methods, write down exactly what they did and what they observed as a result of that, and then you can go back and see, okay, this method didn't work for me. No matter how many times I tried it, it just didn't work, whereas this other one gave me observable results, so therefore I will scrap that other method and continue to do the thing that appears to be working. I also personally believe that some things are worth keeping to ourselves, so I do think that many of our personal workings that we find out may well be kept private. I like to keep a lot of my things private. I do record everything that I do, or I try to, especially if it's like an official thing that I'm doing, I record it. But I will give you one personal example, although I'm going to write about it in my blog because it's just too long of a story for me to tell, and I like to be very detailed. You know, I can't tell a short story. So instead of putting it here, I'm going to put it on my blog and you can go and read about that. But it's basically a story about one thing that I was doing, never really felt like it was giving me results, so I just stopped doing it because it didn't matter, and then a book that I read instructed me to try it a different way. I did, and I physically felt results from it. Therefore, I know that that method works better for me than the other. So if you're interested, please go read that. But anyway, I don't think there have been any big official studies on these subjects yet, at least none that I could find while I was doing my research last year, but of course I did not do exhaustive research of every single location out there in the world. So if you have access to such databases and things like that, or journals, you might be able to find something that people did. But individuals do their own studies all the time. Like I said, a lot of us, I think, record what we do because that's recommended in a lot of books, so at least that's where I got the idea, so I assume that some people at least have that idea. So you can certainly conduct your own experiments and track your own progress, and then talk to other individuals about what they have observed as well. Switching gears briefly to the spirit guides question, I have never heard of something like that happening, but it certainly does not seem unlikely to me, because energy manifests differently in different beings, and merging them would cause them to overlap, which can be different depending on what the energies are. Some energies mingle well together, and other energies just repel. I haven't personally done a lot of work with spirit guides, so I can't tell you definitively, but it makes sense to me that you would have experienced something like that, although I have never heard of it before. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys in a few weeks, because next week I believe you'll be hearing from the subs, and I still have to get them the intro so they can use that. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to be awesome, and blessed be. Bye! So when people mention the magic